Hello? Hello, is that Mr. Drew?
Yes, speaking.
This is Frank Page from the Chronicle. We'd like to do a story on your holiday flight last year.
Well, I don't really know, Mr. Page. It was quite traumatic. I don't really know what to say.
Well, Mr. Drew, it would only take a couple of hours of your time, and the fee would be quite substantial. And I'm sure our readers would love to hear your story.
Well, I don't really know what to say.
Well, Mr. Drew, as I say, the fee was quite substantial, and the money would come in handy, wouldn't it?
Yes, I suppose it would. So where would we go from here?
Well, Mr. Drew, you'd come into the office maybe sometime next week, just for a couple of hours. We'd take down your story and you would be paid. As simple as that.
Okay, Mr. Page, I'll take you up on that offer.
Good, Mr. Drew. Very, very good. Mr. Drew, while you're on the phone, if you've got a few minutes, could you just give us an outline of the story? It will help a lot, and it will save you time when you come into the office next week.
Okay. Where do you want me to begin?
Well, Mr. Drew, from the beginning would be a good idea, don't you?
Okay, from the beginning. Well, I was standing in my garden outside my cabin in Forest Retreat, and I looked up at the sky, so cold and grey, snow in May, the weatherman had to say, and it was coming in later on that day. There must be somewhere hot and sunny, said a voice inside my head. I think it's time for a holiday. But I haven't got a lot of money. How much would I need to get away? So I got on the internet without delay. I was in luck. 2 weeks in Spain for £300, and the plane was leaving later on today. With food and transport all thrown in, it could only be win, win, win. So I got down my suitcase from up the loft and threw all my summer clothes in. Then checked once more to make sure I had enough, and nothing had been forgot, like pants and socks. I looked in the mirror. I was so pale and thin. But with plenty of good food, and 2 weeks in the sun, and lots of suntan cream, I'd soon have brown skin, and in the right clothes I wouldn't look so thin. So I phoned the travel agent, and she said I could book my ticket online. The lady said, "You've had the last booking, just in time. Your plane will be leaving tonight at 9:30. Are you still there, Mr. Page?
Yes, still here, Mr. Drew. We're still here.
So at 5 o'clock, I locked my front door, left my car on the multi-storey car park, 2nd floor, next to the railway station, and then took a train to the airport and collected my ticket from where it said Skyline Bookings and Reservation. But when I checked for flight information, to my horror a flashing light said delay, stroke, cancellation. All hot and bothered, I rushed back to Skyline for information. The girl said not to worry. There was a technical fault, but a plane was on its way and would be leaving tonight, if not the very next day. Well, there was nothing else I could do, so I looked around for a cafeteria. I knew there was one at the far end of the airport, but I settled for one, which was a little bit nearer. I found a comfortable chair, and with a large mug of tea and a bacon butty, I sat in the lounge. A big screen was showing Man United on the telly. I made a fool of myself by shouting, "Come on lads, give it some welly." 2 hours later, no news. So I had myself a couple of beers. I wasn't driving, so I had nothing to lose. I closed my eyes and started to doze. I must have fallen asleep, still wearing my summer clothes. I was playing football. I just committed a foul, and the ref was taking my name. It wasn't a dirty game, but then someone else was calling my name. "This is the last call for Mr. Drew. Go to gate number 2. Your plane is about to depart." I was half asleep. I hardly knew where I was. I ran as fast as I could. I was sweating and I could hear the pounding of my heart. "Are you still there, Mr. Page?"
Yes, still here, Mr. Drew, still listening. Carry on.
Well, at last I reached the departure gate. A guy checked my ticket and said, "You're lucky, mate. You're almost too late. Another minute I would have closed the gate." As I boarded the plane, all eyes were on me, and I felt such a fool. I said, "Sorry, folks." Then to top it all, when putting my hand luggage in the overhead locker, I banged my knee and cried out in pain, and found all the passengers were looking at me again. I sat down and closed my eyes, and when I woke, I looked through the window. We were over the sea, and lightning was flashing, there was thunder and rain, and the plane was being buffeted all around, and I thought the engines were giving out a worrying sound. And I wish I was back home in England, safe and sound on the ground, instead of 33,000 feet up on an Aldi flight in the middle of a stormy, rainy night. Then an enormous bang and flash of light. The plane engines are on fire, and now giving out no sound, the plane is going down, down and down. The captain battles to gain control. There are screams and cries, and people praying for their souls. Then there is one almighty splash. All the lights go out, screams and cries again. Children calling for their mothers, fathers, uncles, aunties, brothers. And we're all thrown forward, we're on a wave, in the darkness with the wind and sea swirling all around. The plane is sinking fast. Down into the deep we fall. My eyes and mouth are filled with seawater, unable to breathe, to speak, to call. Deeper and deeper and deeper we call. How's that, Mr. Payne? You still there?
Yes, still here, Mr. Drew. We're still here. Carry on.
Then I see a gap, a hole. I see a child, I grab her arm. We swim right through. Then up, up, through the ocean dark and grim. I grip her tight. Up and up and up I swim. My lungs are ready to burst through my safety vest. Are we the only ones, I wonder, what has happened to the rest? We break through the ocean's outer skin. We take a breath and we gulp it in. Then a rescue flare. Is that a dinghy floating over there? I rub the salt water from my eyes. There's a ship, I hear the sailor's cries. Then suddenly there's the captain's outstretched hand. I grab hold and sailors pull us in. Susan, the girl I'd saved, was cold and wet. A sailor gave her a sheepskin coat. Thank God, her mum and dad were safe in another boat. We were 3 days at sea before we reached dry land, where we were greeted by TV and reporters and the town's brass military band. Now that's been a year, almost to the day. I don't think there's any more than I can say. How's that, Mr. Page? Is that all right for you?
Very good, Mr. Drew, very good. Of course, when you come in, we'll take a few more details, and I'm sure our readers will be very interested to read your story. Mr. Drew, while you're on the phone, have you heard from Susan lately and her family?
Well, Mr. Page, as a matter of fact, I have. She sent me a card thanking me for saving her life. And they're coming over tomorrow night.
Very good, Mr. Drew. It's nice to know you've still got contact there. Mr. Drew, I don't want to pry, but I believe you had an accident recently in the forest.
Nothing to speak of, Mr. Page, nothing to speak of. Just a little injury, but everything's fine now.
Very good, Mr. Drew, very good. You say Susan and her parents are coming over tomorrow?
Yes, Mr. Page. They're coming over. I'm having them for dinner.
Very good, Mr. Drew. Hopefully to see you on Wednesday. Take care. Bye for now.
Goodbye, Mr. Page. See you on Wednesday.